Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, Agency Transformation Coach and founder of Niche in Control, author of The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom, and the creator of Leverage for Growth. I'm the host of the Leverage for Growth podcast, and I know that in order for you to scale your agency successfully, there are multiple shifts that need to happen within your mindset, skill set, and leadership style. I am on a mission to interview marketing and PR agency owners on their journey to 6, 7, and 8 figures and leverage the lessons from their journey to save you time, energy, and money to get your agency to the next level. If you find value in these episodes, watch the case study video to learn more about Leverage for Growth and how we successfully scale agencies at nicheincontrol.com/case study. That is nicheincontrol.com/case study. You are now listening to Leverage for Growth. Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, founder of Niche in Control and creator of Leverage for Growth. Welcome to the Agency Leverage Edition. Today I am here with Ari Pirutinsky, the founder of Steady Growth Partners, an advertising agency helping B2B companies that are spending over $10,000 a month in ads to drive sales, not leads, through building a data infrastructure needs to reduce lead costs and generate consistent sales. Thanks for coming to our show today, Ari.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So can you tell us about the history and the background of your agency?
Sure. That's a great place to start. Okay. So we'll maybe take a step back and start with the career starting point on the agency side. So I started working for an agency about 10 years ago now. I was the first employee there. It was a New York-based digital marketing agency. They did a really great job of kind of making me feel before the interview like they were a big agency. And then when I showed up, it was just like me and the CEO sitting there. And I was like, where's the rest of the company? But long story short, I was there for about 8 years, starting off as the first employee. By the time I left there, we were 3 offices on the East Coast, 65, 70 employees. And I was, running the sales and marketing department there. So I was going in and pitching clients like Forbes and AMC Networks. And it was a really fun ride, cut my teeth, on the paid media side. And then at a certain point, I kind of looked at what I was doing and wanted to shift a little bit into doing something on my own, starting my own agency. And I feel like a lot of times a natural progression of like starting an agency doesn't start as an agency. And where it started was I was doing a lot of consulting on the side, friends' businesses, referrals, and I got to a point where I was just totally maxed out of, doing the full-time job at the agency, kind of consulting on the side. And I left the agency. I started taking on more consulting clients, doing everything on my own, doing all the work on my own, all the sales, all the execution, everything. And then you max out your hours doing everything on your own. And you turn around, you're like, I guess I'm starting an agency. So I started an agency. And Steady Growth Partners was born about 2 years ago. And it's been fun. It's been a fun ride up until now, and hopefully that'll continue for a long time. But yeah, that's kind of the founding story of how we came to be.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that there's many agency owners that hear that story and they're like, "That's exactly how I started."
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I frequent a lot of like subreddits around digital marketing and agency life and all that. And very often, I don't really know like where a lot of these people come from, but very often there's posts around like, hey, I want to start a marketing agency. Where do I start? Like what kind of agencies should I start? What kind of services should I do? And it's always like funny to me. We're like, that's so backwards. You don't actually go out and start an agency. You go out and you start delivering marketing services. And when your marketing services are so good that you're maxing out your hours because you have too many clients to actually service, you then ultimately have to hire people to help you if you want to scale, or you can stay. I mean, a lot of people stay at that stage of consulting, but no matter what, like that's the starting point. You don't start an agency without clients. So that's just like the natural progressions. I always chuckle and comment on those, those Reddit posts around like, what's the starting point? How do you do that? And it's just like, you just start servicing clients and make them happy, and then you get more clients and you max out.
Mhm.
So yeah.
It's always funny when people get things a little bit backwards, but it is really cool. So you had it on the side. You started doing a lot of consulting, made the leap, and then started kind of growing and building a team. Can you talk a little bit about that time where you were solo and then you decided that you needed a team? Because I think that's one of the biggest transitions that people make, is going from that solopreneur kind of thing to, I'm going to start growing a team here.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a bit of a mix of two. It's a mix of two things. The first is, unless I was charging extremely high rates, which at that point I couldn't command, I wasn't happy with the income that I was making, which means that we have to bring on more clients. And the only way to bring on more clients, because I'm maxed out, was to hire people to then help me service those clients. So I could bring on those extra hands to like do other things that I was doing, let's say, like sales or admin work, and myself be the one who spends like all the time in execution. But that's where the second piece comes in, which is I have been doing execution and I've been working kind of like in the trenches of paid search and paid social for a long time. And while I do love this space, and I think there's a lot of continued learning, and there's a lot of changing landscapes you have to stay on top of, I was a little bit burnt out of the execution side, and I haven't really spent a lot of time on the business growth side. And that was the part that really excited me. And looking at like, hey, I could create a brand here, I can spend time on learning about like growing a business, which like to me was like really exciting. And I happen to know paid media really well. I've run very successful campaigns. I've run teams that have run very successful campaigns. And I've also done a lot of work on selling paid media, which is a lot of consultative selling. So it's a little bit different than like, maybe a cheaper like SaaS tool type of selling. And I love that part. And I love that, people side of what a people services is, which is like what a marketing agency is, and the relationship side. And like those two things converging basically kind of made the decision to me to say like, all right, well, I'm going to bring people on, but like who are those people? Meaning like if I'm bringing people on the bus, we got to get them in the right seat, right? So what are they ultimately going to do? And the decision was, I want to bring people on that are highly technically capable to run paid ads, paid search, paid social for our clients, so that I can actually take a step out of that. I can assist on the overall strategy side, but I can also spend a lot of my attention on building the company, building the agency, spending time on the relationship side, which I'm very passionate about, and really understanding how to grow a people services. And that's where we started. The first place you start is freelancers. You start to just bring on people and try to figure out like, all right, like what is important to me, and let's make a bunch of hiring mistakes on the freelance side where the commitment isn't very, large. Figure out where to look, how to, integrate them into, your processes on ClickUp and Slack and, communication preferences and all that. But there was definitely a lot of learning there. But that's kind of how I viewed the next step of like who to bring on, like why am I bringing them on, and what should they ultimately be doing, and, what's their role within the agency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, figuring out the right people, figuring out the right seats, being able to make mistakes early is a big piece of it. If you were to look back just from that one kind of like jump before we kind of get into the growth of the company, if you were to look back on that and give somebody that might be in that spot right now some advice on things that you learned that might shortcut some of the lessons, what would you tell them?
I think the number one lesson is, at least that took me too long to learn, is to really understand what you're good at, but more importantly, really understand what you're not good at, and like try to pick up on those signals of like what gives you energy, like what are you excited to do, what like really brings you alive. And like if it's nothing that has to do with anything that you're doing or your agency, maybe like find something else to do completely. But if it's, within the agency space or within like the marketing services space, there's a lot of different components to it. And like I mentioned before, like I love the people side of it. I love the sales side of it. I love the relationship building part of it. I do also enjoy like the technical aspect of what we do on the marketing side. But when I started to really understand and realize like I can definitely find people who are much smarter than me. I mean, that's not hard to do, and that are better than me at the technical side of the marketing, and like facilitate and allow them to really like grow within an organization and allow myself to really do the things that and like spend time on doing the things that I love to do. Like if I understood that and I like picked up on that quicker, I would have been able to move myself quicker to get to that point. And even things like, design, which I'm terrible at design. And like that was one of those things that I realized very early on. Okay, let's bring on a designer very quickly. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of work finding a designer, honestly, a quite expensive designer, but my God, incredible designer. And he's the one who was able to like really facilitate us being able to like push what our vision was, out into the world. But I think from an advice standpoint, really pay attention to yourself, really pay attention to what gives you energy, because it's just a grind. So if you're doing the things that you love to do, if you're doing the things that you're good at doing, just double down on that, man. Just double down on the things that you're good at and figure out like how you ultimately like fill the gaps and the things that you just are not really that great at.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing that's really cool about your story is 8 years in an agency where it was you and the CEO building it to 65, 70 employees or so. There's probably so many different lessons that are learned from that experience that you can pull into your own agency experience. What are some of those kind of lessons or things that you kind of took from that experience that you're now bringing into your agency?
Yeah, I'll start with the what did I unlearn? Because I think one of the pieces, like when my only experience is with one company or one agency, and that's really where like I, for all intents and purposes, like grew up in the space. You start to like feel, and like the people that I work with, like the CEO there, the COO at that point, who's now actually the CEO there, and like the team there and the group of people was like they were unbelievable, incredible human beings. I loved every minute of like being there and being in the trenches with them and creating those relationships, and I do very much miss it. But when I then stepped out and started my own agency and started my own thing, I always had this voice in the back of my head of like, well, this is how you do things, or that's how you do this piece. And it's like, well, why do I think that way? And there's like a million different ways to be successful. And there's a ton of different like routes and like positions, or rather not positions, but like directions you can take to ultimately get to the like that final destination. And I think it's all like part of the same thing of like realizing what you're really good at and like leveraging that. But I think for me, it was a lot of I kept having to like take that initial feeling of like, well, I would have done it this way if I was, back where I was, or they did it this way successfully, or and that's really like a positive thing to say. Like there was a lot of successful things that I learned there, but unlearning a lot of that and kind of like finding my own way to do it really, and it took me a long time to do that, really influenced and continues to influence like how I do things, but also really helps continue to build my confidence. And I think like one of the like on confidence, I think like confidence is a huge piece of like doing what we do on the agency side. And again, it's really like a people driven business. And I think that like one of the lessons that I learned from that experience and like what I try to impart on my team here and what I really try to like repeat to myself here is the kind of like the freeness or the long leash of like just just try and just make mistakes, and as many mistakes as you possibly can, and learn from that. And like I tell my team all the time, and like they have probably heard me say this a million times, but as a reminder, the first client phone call I ever had, at that point, my former agency, CEO boss, like it was so bad, like he hung up the call in the middle. And like
Wow.
but like I continued going, and it
Hmm.
was like, all right, let's just like figure out like how we like take these calls. And it was just like, just reps, just like continue doing it and continue making mistakes and continue failing. And if you have that type of environment, the pressure that like you're able to remove really allows like people to shine. And there was a point within like my journey of working at that, like where I came from, and between then and where I am now, there was a journey where I was actually the head of marketing at a really like fast growth startup, and it was post a very large, $50 million round. And I was, taking what I learned in the agency side and went into that business and that startup with a lot of confidence. And they had the complete opposite type of culture, which was, we're hiring you to come in. You have to already have all the answers. And if you don't, then why don't you? And did we make the wrong hire? And, there wasn't any kind of like room for learning. And ultimately, like, I hated working there. And that entire environment was just so negative. And like, I just went the complete opposite way. And like that was like the biggest learning of really just creating that space and that openness to allow the team to really test, learn, and really, make mistakes in the way that like if you're not making mistakes at all, you're really not expanding your capabilities, and you're really not, learning as much as you possibly can. And I think that environment really allowed like a very strong sense of like camaraderie, and like we got your back no matter what. Just go out and like just do whatever you need to do. And when you come to whoever it is, your superior, your boss, like group, anyone, and you have a question, also come with like a few answers that you think you might, a few answers that could potentially solve, that problem. And it's like all part of the same thing. It's like, I don't really know how to do this, but like I think it might be this. It's like, all right, just go out and try it, and just go out and like just, the Mark Zuckerberg thing, just like, move fast and break things.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, what's really cool is from those experiences, you learned a lot more about what you value and organizational values and organizational culture. And there's a saying, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," and
Yeah.
and uh, and I think there's probably some lessons that you're bringing into your agency when it comes to the culture side. One of the things that you mentioned was like the continuous improvement, or being able to fail fast and win fast. What are some of the other things that kind of stand out to you when it comes to the organizational side that you're kind of bringing in for your team?
Yeah. So I feel like one of um, I feel like the word agency just like has a bad rap. Like it just has like this negative connotation to it, and I hate that. Um, and one of the things that we try to do, and that like I try to do, is bring a sense of, and like it's on the employee side and on the client side, but bring a sense of predictability. So I feel like there's a lot of agencies that manufacture stress and manufacture anxiety. And it's not because they're looking to stress out their team or create anxiety within the organization. I mean, I would hope not. But I think a lot of that is around the idea that they take direction from the outside as opposed to from the inside. And they don't do a really good job at client management. And when you don't do a good job at client management, and when you allow clients to dictate, your process, and you allow clients to dictate, how you structure your communication with them, you don't allow like your process and your structure to actually shine, and you don't allow your team members to actually do the work that they're really good at doing, because what happens is they just are always on their toes answering to clients. And it's the salespeople promising things to clients, and then kind of just like ghosting the rest of the team, and then like the team doesn't really understand what the scope is, and the client is upset because they felt the scope was misrepresented. And like and because of all that, and because of realizing like where a lot of the people that I work with now, and the team that we have now, and just the broader like agency space, like where they come from, I very intentionally and very specifically come at it from the complete opposite direction, which is we do everything we can to create predictability and to reduce, anxiety and stress. And like that piece, that predictability. Now, there's nothing wrong with putting some pressure and stress on yourself to do a really good job and to execute, but that pressure should come from inside as opposed to outside forces. And what we do very, very well, and from the minute we get on the phone with prospects, we set expectations very clearly, very conservatively, like realistic expectations. And we back up our expectations with delivering clarity. So when you deliver clarity, so for example, in an onboarding process, the client signs a contract, the client sends their deposit or their first month's payment, you send out that invoice, and there's like all of a sudden they're excited, and then what happens, there's like this build process. Okay, so you have like this discovery call, and then like at that point where you're starting to like do all this back end work, where you're building out like the data piece, where you're building out conversion tracking, where you're building out the campaigns, like the client is kind of like left in the dark. But we very intentionally don't do that. So we very intentionally, like in the initial stage of onboarding clients, we lay out very carefully, here's what you can expect in the first month of the relationship with us. Here's what's going to happen in week 1. Here's what's going to happen in week 2, and so on and so on. And when you do that, and then when you communicate with the client after week 1, okay, here's just a very quick update. I know we're having, our strategy call or launch call in 2 weeks from now. Quick update on what was done this week, a couple of questions for you. You proactively communicate as opposed to waiting for the client to say like, hey, what's going on? Where's this? Where's that? So when you do that, and when you are very intentional about your process, and your team is very intentional about your process, and I think also understanding the why behind the process, and the why is because everything that we do is so that you, like team, can do a better job. It flows much easier, and it creates that culture of like, yeah, we're empowered. We're the ones who know how to do this. The client's hiring us and paying us because we're the experts at doing this. And in part of our expertise, it's not just the technical advertising side, it's client services. And when you infuse that like confidence into your process, you set that stage for the client to take a step back and feel, okay, they got this. That we're good. They got this. And like that feeling is big. Like a lot of times you have these calls with clients, and it's not really about like the client remembering every slide of the presentation. It's really about like when the client leaves that call, that group call, that presentation, it's an hour call, like how do they feel after? And if they feel like like you guys, us, our team, like has it under control, our team can take a deep breath and just follow process. And that's where I think it's the process builds the culture, the structure builds the culture, and it just reinforces itself in the way of like confidence, and in the way of ensuring and reassuring other new clients, we got this, we know what we're doing, this is how we do things, this is how we communicate, this is the structure. So I think that is how you go ahead and actually like build culture. And I think that's something that I very, very intentionally try to push and try to, impart on the team in like how we want to do things at Steady Growth.
Mm-hmm. I love it, man. I'm a process guy, so
yeah. Was that long enough of an answer?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In summary, I think that some of the values that you talked about, transparency, communication, intentionality, being able to bring confidence to the process and following the process allows the client to actually feel the confidence as well, not only in what you guys are doing, but also that they're going to get what was promised. And so I think those are really awesome values. When you look at kind of like the future, and you're starting to look at Steady Growth Partners, what are you getting excited about maybe in the next 1 to 3 years?
am I allowed to use the term AI, or is that, are we banning
You
that?
can use that term
I
if
can
you'd
use
like.
that
So
term.
go ahead.
Okay, cool. Um, I think it's really exciting to be a part of. I mean, probably a lot of different industries, but the space that we're in, like the agency world, if you're not part of a really big bloated agency and you're part of like the type of lean agency that we are, that is highly specialized, we're not a very large team. We're very malleable. We can create whatever form we want, like on the fly. I think it becomes very exciting to look at the fast-paced developments on the AI side, where we could not be in a better spot to 10x our productivity and just like blow a lot of these like larger, bigger agencies like out of the water and move very quickly to like implement what we're seeing on the AI output side. Like, at least for right now, AI is not going to take over strategy. I don't know. We'll see what OpenAI releases next week, but at least this week, strategy still comes from the human. Strategy still comes from that idea of like, what is the actual prompt, but the execution piece, which is where a lot of these agencies, like large agencies, legacy agencies, are paying for. We can utilize AI to like really supercharge that. So to me, that's really, really exciting. I think that there's always going to be a need for demand generation style marketing. I think being able to really, and like, it's the same concept of like, the developments in AI, and also, well, what comes from that as meaning like, what other potential, search platforms or social platforms will be, the next big thing or part of the next big thing in advertising. Like, I'm excited about being in the position to really leverage that, to really jump on that, to really be able to like bring that to our like, output, and ultimately what we're able to do for our clients. And it's fun. I think I also like, what excites me is the idea that people are not going anywhere, and I love the relationship and the communication and the the management of like, how do you deliver a service and like keep other people happy in delivering that service. I think we're really, really good at that, and I think it's going to become increasingly more rare. And I think the agencies that really pay attention to developing their human skills and developing their relationship skills and developing their client retention skills are really going to shine. And I think that we do a lot of work on that side. We do a lot of like, when it comes out in conversation or in the relationship, it seems very natural, but we do a lot of training around that. We do a lot of talking about it. We do a lot of, analyzing what's working, what's not, and I think that putting the effort into it now and really getting very, very good at that is only going to, further allow us to grow in the way that we are now. So to me, there's just, it's exciting. There's a lot of exciting, opportunities out there. And yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see.
Awesome, man. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for anybody that is listening, what's the best way for people either to get in touch with you or learn more about Steady Growth?
Yeah, well, my home address is, I'm kidding. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find us at trysteadygrowth.com. Yeah, I mean, probably LinkedIn's the best way to find me. You can check me out on Twitter, X, at my just full name. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
For anybody that's listening, all the links to Ari and Steady Growth will be in the show notes. And Ari, just thank you so much for coming out, man, and talking with me today.
Thank you, Jesse. It's good to see you, man.
Agency owners, if you want to transform your agency to sustain and grow without your direct involvement, where you can stop working in the business and start working on the business, where you can free up your time, delegate work more effectively, price and position your services to finally get paid for what you're worth, and have the team run the day-to-day, go to nicheandcontrol.com/case study now to learn more about leverage for growth. and also to book a free strategy session with us. We'll look at your systems, determine exactly what you need to do in order for you to scale this year, and to create a strategic plan so that you can live the life of entrepreneurship you've always dreamed about. Go to nicheandcontrol.com/case study now.